Okay, one of the perks that we have, and we aren't going to, we don't have the perks of healthcare as jokes, but any of the speakers will get a book from Carl Schutz, who started the Global Mural Conference, and it talks about his story and journeys and the places it's been. So this is for you, Joe. Thank you.
Hi, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's get from Rick and everybody's attention. There's an important person here that seriously, Mural Mania wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for for the connection to Mark Golden here at Golden Artist Colors from day one. We had a fellow, Noel Dobbins, that worked with me, and he was just so inspirational. He has scleroderma, and he had cancer that summer. Never anything got in his way. And this is honest to God true story. On his, he's up in Rochester General, probably 3 days before he passed away. He is calling Golden Artist Colors for the next donation for a mural. And I never forgot that, and neither has Golden Artist Colors. And that giving just kept on going. Every time we had volunteers paint a mural, and we were teaching painting, Mark was there for us. The paint showed up on my doorstep, without any questions asked.
Wow.
And I take the photos, and it just made my day to see that happen. And the future is through people like Mark, and the paint is wonderful. We put it on sale 9 years ago, and it's still stunning. And now we have this product otherwise we can mix the two together. We should be in good shape for a while. So, and without further ado, Mark Golden from Golden Artist Colors. Thank you very much.
Can everybody hear me? Is that okay? If you want to come up closer, you're welcome to do that. I have to say, after Denise and Joe, they make me cry every time I hear about what can happen when art is combined with our ability to change and to make the world different. So that's why I'm here. Mark said, "Come on, let's do something," and so I listened. I just want to thank all of the organizers for all the work that they've done to make this thing happen. A tremendous amount of work, and special attention to Mark DeCracker for his unflinching effort. Before I get started with this presentation, I thought maybe just a brief history, if you folks aren't familiar with Golden Artist Colors, it'll give you a sense of why I have the best job in the world. I get to work, and it's not hyperbole, and I've shared this with many people, I get to work with the most creative people in the world every day. And the exciting part about this conference is not just creative people doing beautiful work, but creative people changing the world. And what a delight that is to be a small part of that. So here it was, Beaucourt Artist Colors. This is my great uncle Leonard Beaucourt. Started making hand-ground oil colors in 1933. My dad joined him. It was cachet, really unique to make hand-ground colors, as it still is. They made about 72 tubes a day. They could make about maybe a couple of gallons of paint a day. And a little bit different of a company. A company that was, my dad joined in 36, and he was a paint maker, and it was a company not just making paint for artists, but making paint with artists. This was a great photograph I got. Unfortunately, it was 2 years, 2 weeks after my dad passed away. An art historian sent us this photo and said, could you have your dad identify all the artists in this photo? And this is my dad. I'm not sure if he's painting, but he might be just leering. I'm not sure. And this is my great uncle Leonard Beaucourt. Every 2 weeks, they would move. This is their paint maker. This was the muller and the glass table, and you can see just a little bit of the pigments back there. They would invite artists. Every 2 weeks, they'd close down the shop, and they would just paint. And that really has become the theme for the Golden Artist Colors, that excitement, that vicarious thrill I get to be able to make materials for some of the most incredible creative people in the world. If you visited us in 1980, when we started, my dad was a career paint maker for 40 years. He retired in 72 and moved upstate New York to this beautiful village of New Berlin, New York, near Cooperstown, Hamilton, New York. I thought as a teenager, I was 14 years old when I bought the place in 1968, I thought it was the stupidest thing they ever did. I lived close to Manhattan, just 10 minutes from the George Washington Bridge in Jersey, and I thought that's the life I'm going to live. And they brought me up to the country every week because they didn't want to leave a teenager at home. So I thought they had lost their marbles. This was Golden Artist Colors, 1980. It was really through the inspiration of my mom. My dad had retired. He was retired for 7 years, and he was underfoot. And my mom said, "I'm going to kill you or divorce you, and probably both." And she said, "Call Mark up and see if he wants to make paint with you." I was in Rochester, New York. I graduated University of Rochester, spent some time at RIT and MCC. So thank you guys for my education. It didn't do me any good. I thought I was going to go into neurosciences. I did graphic arts, and I didn't get into grad school. And so my dad called and said, "Mark, do you want to make paint with me for a couple of guys? We'll do it in the barn next to their house at a beautiful little farm." I said, "I'm not sure, that we can just make a business." He wanted to just make paint for his friends. That was literally his concept of going back into business, was just to make paint for his friends. And that's how it started. The first few years of business were really tough. We had spent, I didn't have any money. He had a retirement. He sold his part of the business, Beaucourt, and so he did well, retirement income. I went through that totally. He had a home in Florida. We sold that. Then we started selling off all the paintings that they had collected over 40 years. Now remember, they were in New York. They were doing work for, whether it was Pollock or de Kooning, Rothko, Motherwell, Franklin Thaler, you name the artists, they were making paint for those folks. At that point, no one had a pop to visit, but they were, eventually they all became, kind of that New York scene. So here we were. I was 26 when we started, and totally paranoid that I was going to lose all my parents' money. And things kept growing, but it was the confidence that artists had that, "Mark, keep going. This is going to work out. You just have to stick with it." By 1987, we finally turned a profit. That year, we finally turned a profit. We also created a profit sharing for the employees, which is a better way to start profit sharing when you're actually making a profit, I've learned. But that concept of sharing with the people who make a difference has become part of the philosophy of Golden Artist Colors. And in 2002, my family sold the minority share of the company to the employees. It allowed us to buy a farm right next to the factory that we wanted to convert into an artist residency. In 2010, we sold the majority of the company to the employees. That allowed us to build the Golden Artist Colors Foundation residency. I hope you folks, it's 2.5 hours away from here, and you get to go visit a paint factory, a gallery. We have a show tonight. This is now Golden Artist Colors in this year. It's expanded to 200 now employee owners of the company, and we'd be just delighted if you came and visited. Mural arts and community. Let me get to the point. This was from an artist we had a chance to work with before she passed away, Eva Cockcroft, a major mural artist in New York and California. Public art in general gives a neighborhood an identity, creates beauty and something for people to see as they walk by. I think that was a pretty humble explanation of what she actually did. I think a better explanation is from Maura E. Green. Mural projects mobilize communities to articulate dreams, express frustrations, and most importantly, consider strategies for change. Thus, they are worthy consideration for public policy makers. And that brings us to, I think, our discussion today, and especially how excited I am to go after Joe and the presentation of O positive is our company's vision, which we did by actually bringing together our community, our local community, artists, a range of 60 people to help us craft the vision for the future. And yes, it is big and it's audacious, but I know through the kinds of things that you folks have expressed, the kinds of opportunities we've had to work with artists who actually are making a difference, this is really possible. Our company is a catalyst, bridging creative communities and inspiring positive global change through the arts. It's been a pretty exciting opportunity to be able to connect with you folks, and that's pretty much why I'm here today. But I thought what I'd share is our history in working with murals, which was pretty much, artists have taken us to where we are today. I would like to say there's some great brain trust in New Berlin, New York, but there isn't. It was simply an idea of listening to what artists needed and what they were doing, and to be inspired just by that. So in 1984, we're 4 years in business. I'm still losing all my folks' money at this time, but Archie Rand came to us and said, I'm doing a mural. It's an enormous mural in Israel, and it's going to be on marble. The first thing I asked him is, well, it's a new construction. Why don't you change it from marble to actually a surface where it's better to get adhesion of paint? The architect refused. They wanted to do it on this very expensive marble. I love the fact that Archie, you can see on the day 3, they actually did faux bois, decorative wood on top of the marble. That is perfect. So we needed to learn some new tools, so it required us to learn how to get adhesion onto marble. We went to our dentist. How do you get adhesion onto enamel? So we learned from those tools how to get better adhesion onto marble using a silane coupling agent. And then this was the first time we actually incorporated a new UV filters into a varnish to help protect the mural. It's exciting that this thing still sits up. This is the Middle East. You know, you worry about the marble certainly, but it couldn't be a more difficult environment, except for the next piece. This is another 2 pieces of Archie's mural dedicated to Genesis. It was by Norman Yates, West and North, and this was at the University of Alberta, and it was on the education building. We had the good fortune of being able to work with Canadian Conservation Institute to help develop the structure to hold this. Each of those pieces, it's hard to tell. You guys work so big, the sense of scale is totally screwed up. But each one of these pieces is a 4x8 sheet of plywood, so you get a sense of that scale. So it was MDO plywood. The Canadian Conservation Institute set up a scaffold for all the plywood to be attached. We had to come up with edge protection to avoid the edges of the materials from swelling. Material for the back of the plywood, and then paints for the surface. And this is 1987, Edmonton, Alberta, just the opposite of Jerusalem. And here's a picture from 2012, and here you get a better sense of the scale of the piece, or a little bit. Why is that still standing as well as it is to date? Is because they set aside a budget for maintenance. So we have very few people and very few communities, organizations that ever set aside monies for maintenance of murals. They basically have just enough to buy the scaffolding. Maybe they have enough for all the materials. They'll try to get as cheap materials as they possibly can. Oftentimes, they're looking at budgets. They're not thinking about longevity. Maybe they actually can pay the artist something. Oftentimes, it's so much less than what the time is spent for the artist doing the work. They have no money of being able to put for conservation, and that's not just for small community murals. That's also for large community murals. Is not having the kind of infrastructure that understands if you really are spending the time and effort, and you think this thing is important in your community, you should be putting some money aside for its maintenance. But that's a tough thing to swallow. Here's a case of an artist, Knox Martin. We've worked with Knox over the years in many different projects, but this was a case, 1999, he wanted to repaint his mural. This is on 20th and the West Side Highway, or West Street now. Beautiful mural. You can see how bright it was. I'm not sure if this comes across ever, but it really was a brilliant mural. The difficulty with murals, as you know, it's not just the paint lasting, but it is the building going to last. So you can do all you can to build a structure that's going to be perfect. The paint's perfect. You have maintenance and everything else, but New York being what it is, they built a building only 3 feet away from that mural. So Knox, 90 years old, right? Got onto a cherry picker 6 stories up and painted out his name. Here's a 90-year-old graffiti artist. I love his kind of sensibility. It's like, screw you, I'm still there. I'm not dead yet. We've done other murals for other artists that pretty much are maybe more known for their sculpture or canvases, but for Frank Stella, for Roy Lichtenstein, for a bunch of artists that had done work, as well as some really talented mural artists as well, William Cochran, Ken Twitchell, Eric Grohe, and then just the murals have exploded across the country. So where we can, we've supported those things. Our greatest support is really for artists that are making a change, that are going into communities and saying, through art, we can have a voice, or we can allow other people to have a voice that may not have had a voice before. This is from I was at a conference. Lori McKinney was presenting at this conference, and she was sharing about art in rural locations, that there just isn't a lot of support. And she wanted to start this kind of music center and invite kids in and do workshops, and she was excited about that, and she had this idea to do this, invite artists in the area to do murals in this alleyway to kind of enliven the city in West Virginia called Princeton. Not a very big population in Princeton, West Virginia, so we supplied the material, and from there she was able to generate enough excitement that the community leaders got behind this generation of their music center and Renaissance Center in this little town of Princeton, West Virginia. This is another project, Project Row Houses. Again, all they want for the benefit that they're providing is just a little bit of paint to get them over the hump in terms of a budget of materials. Project Row Houses, I think another critical project that was transforming Houston. They had purchased these single-room homes that were in the poorest section of Houston, and they developed it into an art center, art galleries, as well as public low-income housing and artist residency. So to take from some of the worst areas and to create through arts, and that's what you folks do, through the arts, to create those kinds of change. And then conceptual art. We think about what matters. In this project, Lana, you interviewed the public and simply asked what matters, trying to give voice to people who didn't have voice before, and to be able to share that in a simple form. Having the public invited to help paint these things and put up this was in Peekskill, New York. Just because of our ability to provide some paint, we're able to be part of some of the most amazing change in the world. We've been able to provide paints for murals all over the world, Bosnia, and for Aboriginal Australians, for paints in Russia, in Haiti. So it's a pretty exciting business, something that I never thought I would ever say. I did not want to go into business. That was the last thing I thought. To be a businessman was like, I thought it was a curse. It was like the bad joke in The Graduate, you know, plastics on plastics, and what am I making? I'm making plastic paint. I'm right in the middle of that, and couldn't be more delighted. And then, of course, the relationship with O positive and how powerful that thing is. I think you know, for all of us involved in the arts, of the kinds of change when people really come together to make this happen. So yeah, it's about art, but it's so much bigger than the art. Thanks for these slides, Joe. Sure. There's another piece that I'm going to share, and I'm going to take a little bit of an aside. Let me just see what my time is like.
We'll give you more.
This is a group of painters that I've come to know over the last 14 years. They are some of the best decorative painters. And oftentimes I speak to college students, we talk about careers in the arts, and we all know how tough that is, to have a career where you can earn money from what you do. But when I think about mural artists having that sense of scale and space, you also have the tools to do these decorative works. These are two wonderful decorative painters, Jan Bergwies and Michel Vandelier from Belgium. And I brought a stack of books of their last catalog. Every year we meet in another city. Last year it was in St. Petersburg. The year before that it was in Seattle, Washington. The year before that it was in Italy, in the southern town of Lecce. We were in Versailles the year before that. When painters get together, it is great, and there's always great parties. So maybe that's the reason that I joined them. Eventually you open up a bottle of whatever, and the painting goes on all night, and the partying goes on all night. And so these are folks that are in the decorative arts. These are the people that are painting the palaces and the state capitol and a range of things. So I brought I'll pass that out later just for you to be able to see. But the reason why I'm sharing that also is they're going to be in New York City in 2017. So I'd love, if any of you are interested in either seeing or actually participating with the Salon Painters. It's one of the most generous groups I've ever been with. What they do is it's open to the public, but a lot of what they do are presentations for one another. So you may have the person who is creates the most exquisite sienna marbles in the world doing a lecture on how to do that marble, or curtains, decorative curtains, faux bois, all sorts of trompe-l'oeil, grisaille techniques. So it's open to the public, but what they wanted to do was to take that craft of the decorative arts, which at one point in the 1800s, come on, it was all fused together. There was very little difference between the decorative arts and fine arts. All those kinds of techniques were understood by every artist. We separated that. We said fine arts has this rarefied kind of sensibility, and decorative arts, you're craftsmen, you're like tradespeople. And these folks, many of these decorative painters also have careers in fine arts as well. So I'd love for you to have a chance to take a look. And if you're available in New York, it'll be in the spring in 2017 to go take a look and see what they're doing, especially for any students that think that might be something of an interesting career, is to take a look at the decorative arts. Here's how we got involved in conservation of materials. This again is Eva Kockroff, and this was her mural that had become really faded. It was done in East Harlem, and what we were able to do is we joined a group called Rescue Public Murals. It was formed by Heritage Preservation Foundation, and they put together a group including some of the most incredible conservation scientists. Will Shank was the leader of this group, and for 10 years he was the head of conservation for the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. His passion was murals. He brought together conservation scientists and conservators, material scientists, and we were also invited to participate. What they did was they said, let's create is a tool over the next 3 years. Let's create best practices for murals. So each of you on that mural resource sheet you have the resource for their insights for mural creation, which I think are fabulous. They're fabulous because it starts off with the planning process, the community involvement process. We all think about, you're painters, you think about the painting process, that's what you learn, but you're not. You're community organizers, and if you're not going to get that mural put up. That's the first thing you have to do, is get your community. You can't do a mural to a community, you have to do it with your community. So Rescue Public Murals also was asked to go around through the U.S. and identify the 10 most important murals that were in need of preservation. So they identified this, Eva Cockcroft's, she passed away in the late 90s, and we were able to supply paints for these restoration projects. What's been exciting is actually for each of the projects that have gotten funded so far, we've been able to provide the materials as well for their either restoration or conservation. This is another one, Under City Stone. Under City Stone was by artist Carol Yasko, and it was a early mural in Chicago, one of the only existing murals from the early 70s, still in some kind of shape, and they got enough money from Parks and Recreation in Chicago to be able to restore the mural. It is celebrating James Agee's poem, Rapid Transit, and it's squealing under city stone, the millions on the millions run, everyone a life alone, everyone a soul undone. It was fortunate that although she's in her, I think, early 70s, I might be aging her just a little bit, and she had a broken hip at the time. She was able to assist in the restoration of this piece. So you can see some of the damage here. It was pretty severe in terms of the graffiti, the overpainting, etc., and then the restoration of the work. And again, you can see the damage, and then the restoration of the work, and finally a piece of it. It runs for the full underpass of up in the south side of Chicago. This is another mural that we're now just working with the community, organizing the community to help do its restoration. This is the only existing mural by a well-known Mexican muralist, Arnold Belkin. So it's the only mural that still exists in the United States. And unfortunately, this is what it currently looks like. The building was never really intended or prepared well for a mural. The building owners, and they are thoughtful building owners, they wanted to save this mural. They invited a team of conservators to see how it could be conserved. The reality is the parging and the building is leaking, and the material is falling off. It's right next to a park, so there's basketball courts right underneath, and the city's demanding that they remove the parging and repair the wall. So we've been working with the conservators, as well as the community organizers, as well as the park services, as well as the contractors and the building owners, to assist them in being able to create a plan so we could do a recreation. And we've also asked the widow of Arnold Belkin to give us permission to send us the maquette so we can do the proper restoration. And because all these things are in place, because the community is involved, because the conservation community is involved, she's allowed us the permission to take the maquette and start do the color matching. So this is what we did. This last 2 months, we matched 63 colors from the maquette, and we just sent down those colors. So hopefully in the spring, this painting will also be restored. So that will be the third amongst the 10 of the murals that were recognized. What happened to the other 10? 2 of them no longer exist because the buildings no longer exist. So these things, as much as we want to be able to save these things, it's not always possible. This is another mural that we had the opportunity to work with, and it's been very exciting being able to work with the Philadelphia Mural Arts. They probably have the largest mural program in the world. I know there exists at least over 2,000 murals that they've created since their existence. But this was, I think, the iconic mural in Philadelphia, Common Threads by Meg Seligman. And they had used some materials, some paints that probably were not the best in terms of light fastness, and the paints were fading. What we were able to do is show them through the use of our varnish with the UV protector that they... I'm almost done. With UV protector that we could resaturate the colors. And they were able to do that. Meg was able to repaint some sections as well, but they were able to bring this mural back to life. So we've now introduced a lot of new colors to the Mural Arts program to assist them. They do a lot of painting also off-site, just as you're painting on the Avalon now here at this conference. They also do a lot of work on parachute cloth, Pelon cloth. One is it's because mural season is tight in the Northeast, right? So it allows them to do some installations during warmer indoor climes, as well as it's an easier way to bring children and other people to be able to experience doing a mural, because you cannot obviously have them doing murals up on scaffolding. This was just a 3-year exposure done. This was done by the University of Delaware, which clearly demonstrated the difference between different paint systems, and we were delighted that we thought we would have done pretty well. But since then, we've also replaced the yellows with some new yellows that are listed in the listing when you go on site to take a look at our new mural list. It really recommends this new benzimidazoline yellow, which is really made for outdoor exposure. Here's just a dramatic example showing UV protection of paints. Please don't paint with fluorescent colors outdoors unless you have just a short-term exposure. But it's the best way to dramatically show the kinds of changes that can occur with, this is just a 1-year exposure, okay? So here's the control. This is the control, it's not exposed. And here's a light glaze of that fluorescent magenta here. You can see after 1 year of exposure, there's no magenta. Here is the full strength magenta, the uncoated section, okay? You pretty much lost all your color, turned pretty brown. Here is, we put an isolation coat, like a coat of polymer medium or gel, medium soft gel on the top. It does protect a painting from the problems associated with the chalking that can occur with acrylic paints outdoors. But you can see, still, we lost most of the color. Here, with the UV protection, MSA with 2 coats of varnish, you can see at least we have some color. But that's why you don't paint with fluorescent colors outdoors.
So you can't paint over the fluorescent, over the UV varnish afterward, though. You can't restore it because there's varnish there now.
Can you paint over it? If you're doing a mural, I would say you can, because most likely the reality is no one is going to remove that varnish. It is going to be a difficult process in a mural to be able to remove the varnish. So as much as you're right, if I was doing a canvas, I would say, ooh, okay, you're going to have some difficulties because whatever is going to remove that varnish is going to remove your upper layers of paint. But for mural applications, I think it's a moot point. Unless there is a real concerted effort in terms of conservation that feels that they have the capability to remove the MSA varnish, I would paint over it, and you heard it from me. So. Sorry. But if you call up our technicians, they'll tell you not to, because that's what they're supposed to tell you. Here's just some quick examples, and we'll go over just showing, and this doesn't show up well here, but as we add additional protection of these ultraviolet light stabilizers called tinuvins, we can increase the protection of the material. This just shows that different acrylics act differently, that all those things are not equivalent. There are over several hundred different types of acrylic polymers, waterborne systems, and we do a lot of evaluation of those materials to make sure we're using the best materials. We're always using exterior grade. I know most of our paints are used interior, but you guys are really the canaries in the coal mine for us. We're going to see failure first from your mural work, and you're going to give us the best evidence of what is really durable for interior work. So we really take advantage of your experience, and when you see things failing, it is really important for us to hear about those things. This is just more examples, just showing the more UV protection we offer, the less color change. This is just a measure of color change. You can see white, not much color change at all, so it really doesn't matter. But here's the polymer medium, and you can see we can dramatically protect that as we add more UV protection. Again, in cerulean blue, and here are the resources as well that I want you to be aware of. But I printed that out because I thought it would be much more helpful to have that for you folks. So this is it. You can do everything you want to possibly do to protect your mural. Do the greatest prep, use the best paint, provide the best varnish system and protection, but you really can't predict its future. We can keep it as safe as we possibly can, but in the end, it's out of your control. They'll grow up. And finally, I just want to show this. We weren't involved in this piece, but I spoke to Brandon afterwards because I said, I so much love what you're doing, and as you have needs out there, I want to make sure you contact us for how we might be able to assist. I don't know if you've heard about Exhibit B in New Orleans. Have any of you heard of that exhibit? A few? This is just one piece of these buildings that were actually middle to upper class buildings in New Orleans, and eventually they became derelict. And so there's about 6 of these buildings. I went into it with a group of folks. We wanted to see this. The gates were closed. The contractor was there, and he said, you know, we're from all over the country, a group of resident, we're part of the board of Alliance for Artist Community, said, can we come and see? And he opened up the gate, and he showed us the piece. He said, let me tell you a little bit of history. And he said, we were going to demolish all of these buildings. We were going to put up, we thought that the community would really like basketball courts, so that's what we were going to do, demolish 7 of these structures and put up basketball courts. Brandon started climbing over those walls, right, and started painting murals in those spaces. He invited friends to come start painting murals in those spaces. Every one of these buildings, inside and out, were totally covered with murals. Eventually, people started to go visiting these murals. So they arranged for one weekend where they had some music, and 10,000 people showed up in this residential space. They had to police closed it down, but it was about community, about recognizing that art, even in a very kind of makeshift way, but the art wasn't makeshift. The folks there did incredible work and incredible dramatic pieces. I'll just leave you with this, because this was just, I had to take a picture of this piece on one of the walls, and I'm a blues man, moving through a blues-soaked world, a planet where catastrophe and celebration, joy and pain sit side by side, Cornell West. I think that's the power of the stuff that you folks do every day, and we are so excited to be part of that. And I'm sharing as we can, as you have those kinds of projects that you know are going to change the world, or at least you're part of it. I hope you give us a call and say, hey, Mark, got something really cool for you to be involved with. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, that question I asked you before, my real question is,
You didn't ask your real question first?
well, I guess I didn't quite phrase it exactly, but my question is really, would the paint adhere to the dry varnish?
It does.
It does.
Thank you. The paint, the acrylic paint will adhere to the dried varnish.
Okay.
It is a tighter film So if necessary, I would possibly scuff up the surface. But I recommend that anytime you're working on a glossier surface, working on a plastic surface, people say, I want to plate on plexiglass. How's the adhesion? Adhesion's great. You want to improve it. So, sand it up a little bit, and you're going to greatly improve that adhesion. So just some general rules. I'm a paint guy, and you guys are painters, so if there are any paint questions, I'd be glad to answer those too.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Hold on. Right there, I guess. This is,
That's all we get.
A different book?
did you get one yet? This is for you, as a gift from the Global Mural Association. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I forgot to mention, not only did Mark sponsor the paint that all the artists, and part of the artists aren't here because they're painting right now. And that's the unfortunate thing. They can't. If you had the paint questions, half of them are in the tent trying to finish their works of art. But I'd like to thank Mark for his generous donation so students can be here, our aspiring great artists that painted Harriet right here. There they are. I watched them all week. I was just so amazed and so proud of this connection because that little spark is going to set you guys on fire.
Yeah.
Because
Because they wouldn't have been able to afford to come to.
right, we know starving artists. And throw the college thing on top of it. Oh yeah, it's not. But thank you, Mark, for that, and their pieces down there. And always one of my favorite quotes has always been from Harriet Tubman. The whole thing about the vision and dreaming. I don't have exactly the quote in front of me, but it was always an inspiration for me. And anybody who's read her story about how she led like 400 people to freedom to St. Catharines and other places in Canada, and they brought it to life in that mural down there. I mean, there was a reward out for her for $40,000 in like about 1850. Just do the math, and you brought her to life. Follow me to the North Star. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.